Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Ziv, a member of the OWASP Foundation and the Director of Product at Zenity. Allow me to welcome you all to the first security meetup for Low-Code, No-Code. I'm super excited to see so many of you here today as we discuss the security challenges associated with the growing Low-Code, No-Code movement. Today's OWASP security meetup is basically an opportunity to share knowledge and best practices on how we can address these challenges. We will hear from experts in the field who will share their insights and experiences. And we highly encourage everybody to network and exchange ideas going forward. You can see both on the Zoom chat, you can see that we have all the ways to get acquainted with the community, with the OWASP for Low-Code, No-Code community, either Slack, Git, Twitter, the email group. We highly appreciate your cooperation. At this point, please allow me to introduce and thank our speakers and community members, Michael Bargury, the CDO and co-founder of Zenity, and Don Willits, Senior Security Architect at Microsoft, as both are about to share their thoughts and knowledge with the community. I really hope that today's meetup will serve as a stepping stone towards growing our community and helping each other gain more knowledge and hopefully more collaboration in the form of more meetups, of course. So feel free to get acquainted via the community Slack, group email, Twitter, and thank you all for being here. Michael, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Ziv. Hi, everyone. Really excited to be here, and we are having an amazing turnout. So thank you very much for trusting us with your time. Here's what's gonna happen today. So as I've mentioned, we're gonna have I'm going to cover the top 10, the process behind them, and kind of get us all on the same step, on the same stage of on what the top 10 represent. Before that, we'll share a bit kind of small updates about where we are as a project and as a community, and what we're planning to do in 2023, and where we definitely need your help in order to do it the right way. And afterwards, we'll hear from Don that will share how Microsoft is using the OWASP top 10 kind of to push them forward. So thank you very much for joining us. And without further ado, I'm going to start with kind of a brief overview of how we got to where we are today. So first of all, we've had tremendous support. So from people across the community that have just reached out in the last about 2 years that we've been active, contributed directly to GitHub, reached out to us to chat, and we strongly encourage you to do that. We need more opinions, more views in the community. We've released our top 10 during 2022, and you can find it on the OWASP page and GitHub. And it's already available and being used by organizations today. Of course, this is just the first step. It's just the first time that we are releasing this top 10 officially, which means that there's a lot of room to improve. So please reach out and kind of share your opinion. There's a lot of room for us to grow. I'm excited to share that we are now a lab project, an OWASP lab project, which means that kind of we are at the next stage as a project. For OWASP, which is really awesome. And so this is kind of where we are right now, but more importantly, let's see where we're headed. So this is what we're hoping to achieve in 2023. I mean, the first thing is just about having more perspectives enter the project and help us become better. We want to have people from the application security builders, but also from the platform vendors perspective, hacker perspective, defender perspective. We want to be more transparent about the kind of process that is going on behind the scenes to produce the top 10, and to have more people engaged in the process of making those top 10, reviewing them, and changing the course where this project is going. We're planning to have a new top 10 released, or a new version of the top 10 released in 2023. And with that version, we have a few points in mind following feedback that we've gotten from the community where we want to improve. First of all, we want to put more examples, more real-world examples of how these things get up, of how these vulnerabilities end up looking like in different platforms with different types of organizations. So that's one area that is very important. The second area is documentation that is available or that speaks the language not only of application security professionals, but also of business users. So you can use the top 10 as a way for you to engage with your business users in your organization. And of course, also we understand that low-code, no-code means a lot of different things. And so we are looking into ways in which we can basically split the process into, split the top 10 to focus on different areas. So some risks are more relevant for low-code or for no-code. Some risks are more relevant for RPA. And so we're looking into a way to help people basically slice and dice the top 10 with particular examples that are relevant for each one of these segments. The number one thing we want out of this meetup is to get more people involved. So there are a bunch of links here. Feel free to reach out to me if you're interested and you can't find the right way to contribute. We are looking for people with a wide range of skills. You can be a technical professional, you can be a communicator, you can help write documentation, you can translate. There are a bunch of things that we need in order to be better. And of course, everything we do here under the OWASP project is completely open source and available for everyone to use. So also feel free to just use the material, spread the word out there. If you need our help, we're happy to provide it, but you can also do it without us. That's the magic here. And so this is where we are. And I'll remind you that we will be taking Q&A throughout this session. Feel free to join the Slack. There's a link here, and we'll just it will be easier for us to have that conversation. You'll also be able to hear from other members of the community. One of the most important things you can get out of this is just to meet the other folks in this community. There are really incredible people all around. So feel free to introduce yourself in the Slack channel, in the email group, to get to know other people. Okay. Next up, I'm going directly. I'll be moving to basically give you an overview of the top 10. But before we do that, let me share a bit about how we got to the top 10, or what is the process behind the top 10 as they are today. So first of all, it's important to note that the top 10, they focus on the perspective of an application builder. And we have multiple people in the community that come from different perspectives. It could be from a hacker perspective, or from a perspective of a platform, folks that are building local, no-code platforms and want to do that in a secure way. This project is focused on how builders, they can be professional developers, they can be business users. How can we help them build low-code, no-code applications in a secure way? And what are the risks that we're finding across those applications and across those different platforms? So that's one area of focus. The second piece to note here is that the top 10 here has been introduced based on of scanning of about of a few 100,000 low-code, no-code apps across different low-code, no-code platforms. These are statistics from applications that were scanned with multiple different types of scanners, and this is what brought us to initially to the top 10, or to the 10 categories where we are today. Of course, ever since then, there has been a lot of improvement, mainly through conversations and reviews that people have contributed. So people have reached out with ideas on how things can be changed or can be fine-tuned. And one of the things we want to do better in 2023 is to have full transparency around this process. The best way to be part of this process is to be part of the Slack group and to be part of the email group. That's where we will put out the call for data, call for contributions and reviews. You can also just straight up send a PR to GitHub and we'll review it. And of course, the OWASP top 10 is there for you to use. We've seen people use it as an awareness document to get people on board, or as a framework to kind of understand how do you think about low-code, no-code security, as a way to understand or to push forward standards within the organization, as a way to guide code review. So there are multiple ways. If you are using the top 10 and you'd like to share with us how you're doing it, we'd love to hear from you. So please reach out. Okay. So before one more thing I'm going to do before I show you the actual list is show you one slide which I think captures a lot of why this training is interesting and important. This is a slide that represents statistics from a single organization, Fortune 500 organization. Of course, it's anonymized, so it's not kind of this, the numbers here are not exact. But I think one of the things that makes it clear why low-code, no-code is a thing we have to focus on as a security community is this exponential growth. I mean, with this number of applications that are being built, pretty soon, most applications will be low-code, no-code applications. Now, of course, this will not replace, or we don't think it's going to replace professionally built applications or applications that are built with code. But those are new cases that are being built by new types of users. Some of them professional developers, but others are people in the business, which is amazing. But we need to do it in a secure way. And one of the things that we are concerned with is that in many cases, we find that the SDLC doesn't fully translate to low-code, no-code. So in some cases, we do see full SDLC, and with reviews and everything. But in other places, we see this kind of notion of hit save to deploy changes. And this is, of course, very dangerous. Now, this is an exaggeration, but we do find in some cases, specifically with citizen developers, citizen integrators, business users building applications, they do not have the process that we are used to having with professional development. And of course, this also neglects our security controls, our security reviews, and our security thinking along the way. And the last piece to mention is that we are focused again on the builder side of the shared responsibility model. A lot of the conversation today about low-code, no-code, and the security of low-code, no-code applications being driven by platforms, which is great. Platforms need to be better at making secure applications easier to create. However, as the people building these applications, this is of course up to us. It's not up to the platform to build a secure application. Platforms need to provide secure building blocks. They need to make it easier for us to do our jobs correctly, but it's up to us to build the applications in a secure way and to make sure they comply with our organization. And that's where we focus the top 10. So without further ado, these are the top 10 for low-code, no-code. Of course, you can find them on the OWASP page. I'm going to go through the OWASP top 10, and I'm going to focus on specific examples. These will all be real-world examples that we have found or heard about that happen somewhere most of them in a large enterprise, and they will span multiple different platforms. And so I feel like that's the best way to kind of get a feeling of what these things are or what these types of risks are. And so the first risk I'm going to discuss is account impersonation. And so imagine that you're a low-code, no-code platform, and you want to accelerate your adoption within an enterprise. And say you're somebody like you can be a platform that is already in an enterprise. So you have a SaaS product, an enterprise already uses your product, and now you want to introduce low-code, no-code on top of that. So if any person, any business user, any IT professional, anyone that would want to use your platform to build an application, if they would need to stop and ask for permissions, this would never take off. You would never see the exponential growth in the number of applications that we've seen a few slides before. So the way that the platforms, so platforms have to circumvent that. They have to have a way for users to actually build these applications without waiting for permissions. And the way that this happens is that basically the platforms allow users, or most platforms allow users to embed their own identity within the application. Basically, they copy the refresh token of the, they let you do an OAuth consent flow. And once they receive the refresh token, they allow users to basically copy it, reuse it, and reshare and share it. Now, they don't share the refresh token directly. Instead, they wrap them around with certain concepts like connections or managed authentication. that concept can be shared with other users. Now, of course, in the underlying system, this is simply copying and reusing refresh tokens by different users. So there's no real way to distinguish between different users. Let's see a real world example that would make it much clearer. And so this is a real example from an e-commerce company where they had an issue that people across the company that were part of the a support ticket, so they wanted to support their customers in a specific case. They didn't have access to the history of support tickets for that specific customer, and so the customers were frustrated because the people handling their cases didn't have context, and customer care team, of course, was frustrated. So they came up with a really cool solution, which was to create an application that used one of the customer care team's credentials to grant access to the database where all of this history was saved, and each user of that application could only see the cases that belong to them. So they did put role-based access control into this application, but the underlying connection was done by a single user, by the user that has created the application. And so this is apparently a really great solution, right? So they built this application, which is actually really cool. There's RBAC in the application. Employees, I mean, everybody's happy, right? The people that can access this application to gain access to the history, they're happy because they can do their job better. Customers are happy. Customer care team is happy. However, think about the SOC. So from the SOC's perspective, something completely different is going on here. From the SOC's perspective, there's no app. There's just a bunch of people across the enterprise from multiple IPs, from multiple machines, reaching out to the database with a single user's credentials. And so this looks very much like a breach. This looks like a compromised account. And just kind of think about first of all the fact that they need to understand what is going on here, and then think about the conversation that the SOC team needs to have with that person from the customer care team, and the way that they need to interact now to understand what's going on. And so it's funny, but this is a very common scenario that we see with low-code, no-code applications. Now, of course, one of the things that is, of course, this could happen in any application. The issue with low-code, no-code apps is that they make it easier. They make it the norm. Because how many low-code, no-code applications are actually using service accounts? In many cases, that's just not happening. This is why this is also the first problem, or the first category that we're illustrating. Let's go to the second one. So next up, authorization is of course a big deal, and permissions, which is kind of related to the first category. Authorization is a big deal, and low-code, no-code makes it worse. And the reason why it makes it worse is credential sharing. And so, as I've mentioned, low-code, no-code platforms are providing basically these wrappers around refresh tokens or refresh tokens that allow users to share those identities between each other. Now, it's one of the crucial pieces that low-code, no-code platforms provide is a bunch of connectors, a way for you to connect to SaaS projects and on-prem and wherever you'd like. And now in many different types of platforms, there's this notion of a default environment, an environment where you can create those connections and other users can pick them up and reuse them. Now, of course, this is a mistake, right? In most cases, people don't want to share their connections across their entire organization, but this still happens. And this is not a single platform issue. This happens across multiple different platforms. So you'll find cases where in large enterprises, you'll have connections to production SQL servers. You'll have people's own connections to Office, to Outlook, to Gmail. Those will all be available for people to pick up and use. And again, the reason behind it is just to allow people to run faster. So that's why these features even exist. But just consider this in terms of detection. Low-code, no-code, really, with this notion of sharing the connections, they are really making it very difficult for us to rely on the permission model or the authorization model that we've been used to. Let me share another example that's related to authorization. So in many cases, we find that, providing granular API permissions for each one of the different users that is using your application can be kind of difficult. So in many cases, during debugging or during development, you'll find that people are provisioned multiple different roles for an application are provisioned the same kind of users and administrative users, even if you're just a user or in some cases even an anonymous user. But then the front-end layer, the client side, simply hides away the screens that you're not allowed to see. This, for example, is very common with Salesforce. You'll find that the API permissions are shared across everyone simply because it's very difficult to get them right. And then, but then the UI will hide things away from you. Now, of course, from a hacker's perspective, this doesn't really help at all. Okay, moving on. The third risk is about data. And so many of these applications end up moving data from one place to another. And this leads to two separate things. One is that data could be leaving your organization, could be going across different boundaries. And the other thing is that you can have unexpected consequences, because when you think about 70,000 or 100,000 applications like that, small applications moving data from A to B, then the combined impact of those movements is much larger than what one application does. And so you end up with kind of a mishmash of applications and data. And let me show you a few examples of that. So here's one example. This is very, very, very common. We've been trying to tackle email forwarding and for a long time now as an InfoSec community. So you have solutions that can help you prevent data exfiltration through email on the email server. You have DLP services, or there are many ways in which we are trying to prevent forwarding of professional email to a personal Gmail account, for example. Now, what we've seen happen with low-code is that instead of forwarding emails, people simply copy the content of the email. So they would create basically a subscription when every email arrives to my professional account, copy the content of that email, and then simply save it as a draft or send it to myself with another connection to my Gmail account. Now, because the data is being copied here, the only place where you'll find that data is actually being moved is within the low-code, no-code platform. If you look at it from the network perspective, nothing's going on. So the low-code platform is reaching on behalf of the user to one type of email and then to another type of email, but there's no connection between those two connections to different email services. And so that's a main issue, and we're seeing this again and again. And let me share one example. So with one company, they've shared with us that they had a vendor that was connected. They had a vendor that was working with them in one of the low-code, no-code platforms, and that vendor created a rule to basically sync their calendar between their corporate account and the vendor account. And that rule was still up and running 3 years after the vendor has stopped working with the organization, because it's very difficult to find it, to understand that it's there. And so this is very, very, very common, and I strongly suggest looking for that. Let me share another type of example. So these applications can also cause harm, and hackers are starting to notice that as well. So this is an example where simply you can see this automation that is going through a SharePoint site and then encrypting each and every file with an encryption function that is available in the platform. Now, of course, there are valid cases to encrypt things. I mean, it's important for platforms to provide this kind of features, but of course, it exposes us to certain kind of risks. And so again, this is just one example, but there are plenty of those. Okay, moving forward. Next up, the next risk is about authentication and authorization. Because these platforms, their power is based on how they connect to other places, to SaaS, to on-prem, then users have to make a whole bunch of choices about the configurations in those connections. You will get a lot of different connections, and the people making the choices about how these connections get configured are the people building the applications, which are in many cases business users. So this is a real example where you can see that the user needs to choose with an FTP connection whether it's FTP or FTPS. Now, for a security professional, that choice would be clear. For a developer, it might also be clear. But for a business user, it's probably not as clear. And we should help business users basically make those decisions, or we should have a way for business users to not have to actually make those decisions. These are the things that we should do for them, or we should guide them. Okay. Next up is security misconfiguration. I mean, many of the local no-code platforms start with a limited set of features, and then you get this false feeling of security because you feel like, well, this is a closed garden. The platform has built everything securely, so what could go wrong? The problem is that once a platform grows, it needs to cover different use cases, different types of features that allow its customers to do more with the platform. But these features are always a double-edged sword. When the platform accumulates more and more features, many of them can be risky, and the combination of them could be even riskier. And many of these choices, again, are made at the application level. So every developer needs to make that choice, which makes it even harder. So we get a bunch of issues that are very similar to the OpenS3 bucket that we've had with AWS and other service providers for multiple different years now, where there's valid reason to put something out there that is available to anonymous access. But in many cases, things are misconfigured, then business data could be configured to have anonymous access as well. Let me give you an example. So this was Power Apps or Power Portals is a type of application as part of Microsoft's low-code, no-code platform that is used to create portals that for external users. So, for example, if you want to have a vendor portal, vendors could register, sign in, and then they can have a bunch of information to communicate with you. These portals, these can be created with low-code, no-code through Power Apps. Now, the thing is that in order to be able to facilitate access through anonymous users, so just random people in the internet logging into your website, you need an API that provides information to those users. And so this was available. This is actually part of the offering. Now, this makes perfect sense, but the problem is that you need to make sure that you're only exposing things that are that you should be exposing. And what the team at AppGuard found here was that the default setting was that every such portal was provisioned in a way that all of the tables behind the application were exposed to anonymous access, including those that, for example, should only be viewed by an admin. And so you can see the results here. And actually, Microsoft was very quick to fix this. And by fix this, I mean Microsoft was quick to change the default setting, but you can still make that mistake, right? So let me show you how this looks like. This is, you can see that, first of all, the portals are always in the same subdomain. So it's kind of very easy to enumerate and find those types of domains. And then there's this predictable endpoint where you can find the API. Now, here's an example, a real-world example. This is a website for a large bank, a large US bank. So you can see by going to the portal on that specific endpoint, I find 3 different entities that are available there. One is the default entity, which doesn't really have anything. The other is entity form set, which has a saved forms. So again, not really interesting. And the last one is global variables. So well, let's see what this has inside. Of course, we'll find here authentication tokens because global variables is the way that this application accomplishes authentication to other systems. And so, and again, this is a real example. This was, of course, disclosed a lot of time ago and was already fixed. But one of the problems with the low-code, no-code platforms is that because they facilitate the creation of API, the creation of endpoints on behalf of customers, the endpoints end up being very predictable. And so it's kind of the perfect storm for hackers to automatically scan those endpoints and exploit misconfigurations. Okay, moving on. Injection attacks, and so a lot of times you'll find, and forgive me, I'll be I'll rush up a bit because we're running a bit out of time. Injection attacks are, some of them can be handled by platforms, but of course, platforms cannot cover everything for you. So, in one case, we found we found in one organization an automation that was subscribed to an RSS feed, and then for each one of the RSS feed of the notifications, it created a write query in SQL to an unbound SQL query. And now, of course, this is a surface for injection. So some platforms, or most platforms, provide a way for you to sanitize input, but of course you need to use it, right? And again, as a business user, you don't always know when and how to do that. Next up is supply chain. Of course, supply chain pops up here in low-code again, and in a massive way. The reason why low-code is easy is because you have a giant marketplace of connectors and widgets and whatever you'd like to just pick up and use, which is awesome. But it's very, very easy to bring unsigned code inside, to bring in third-party dependencies. Imagine trying to find all of the low-code, no-code platforms that are using a specific kind of third party, or that have a specific kind of vulnerability, like a Log4j. This was a nightmare last year. Moving on with secrets and data, there are just so many cases where applications are using sensitive data, but they're using it in an incorrect way, and so they're mishandling it. So I'll give you a quick example. So this is an HR team at a large IT organization. They basically created an app that facilitated a giveaway campaign. So you donate money to charity, you provide a credit card number, and they donate the money for you. But the credit card was stored in a default database. It was accessible to the entire organization in plain text. Now, this was the HR team. So it's really cool that they have built this, but they don't know how to store credit cards, nor should they. So it should be our job to make it easier for them. The next one is about asset management. One of the things that is clear about low-code is that a lot more people can build those applications, and it's very easy, or it's much easier to create those applications. This also means that you get a whole bunch of applications. You get people leaving your organization and leaving the apps behind. Many applications are kind of left out there as zombies. There's costs involved, but there's also security risk involved. In many cases, we find that applications begin to take off. They become viral within the organization, and people actually rely on them. And then you're in a bad situation because nobody in IT is there to manage it and support it. And the last thing is about monitoring and logging. So basically, imagine what happens where you get to a point that a low-code application has been breached, and you need to do an investigation and ask yourself, do you have the information you need in order to understand what happened? In many cases, logs are not there. So you won't find the type of information that you need in order to understand what happened. And in cases where they are, we find that those logs are very, very verbal. So there are cases where you'll find, for example, automations that log each and every data point that goes through that automation, which of course means that it could have sensitive data and secrets and other stuff as well. And so forgive me for rushing it a bit at the end. I hope this has been helpful, but this is only the beginning. One thing that we are really hoping to get out of this is for you to participate and push the OWASP top 10 in the right direction, in the direction that you feel is important. So if you feel like some of these categories are clearer than others, if you feel like we've missed categories that are completely out there and you don't find their place in the top 10, reach out. This is the perfect time to contribute to the 2023 version. Thank you very much, and I'll hand it off to Don.
I'm not sure if that went through. Ziv, are there any questions in Slack for Michael that we need to address before I get started?
Nope, you can get started.
Okay. So hello, I'm Don Willits, and I've been working in security at Microsoft for the last 16 years in a variety of roles. I've contributed heavily to the secure development lifecycle, which defines requirements throughout the development process, and I've conducted numerous security assessments against our own line of business software as well as on behalf of our customers. For about the last 4 years, I've been driving security improvements and features into Power Platform itself, both on behalf of our customers and our own internal Power Platform tenant. We have a very large tenant and we dog food pre-release features, so that puts us about 12 to 18 months ahead of our customers. I'm not a member of the Power Platform product group, although we do have several members listening in today, but I do work closely with them focusing on risk reduction, and my current focus is enabling our own citizen developers to write secure low-code, no-code solutions. One of the things that excites me most about today and in the future with this group is getting perspectives from outside of Redmond. And I look forward to learning from you folks about security challenges, not just for Power Platform, but across all low-code platforms. Next slide, please. So if you're not familiar with Power Platform, this is a very loose approximation of the Power Platform stack. I use this diagram both with our customers as well as internally with our own citizen developers. And I could happily spend the next half hour walking through it in detail, using some follow-up slides that are derived from this, but in the interest of time, we'll be real quick. There's essentially 5 pillars to Power Platform. We have Power BI to analyze and report on data, Power Apps to build web and mobile applications, Power Automate to create business and workflows, Power Virtual Agents to create chatbots and conversational experiences, and Power Pages to create business websites. Environments are containers for assets such as apps and flows and chatbots and Power Pages websites. Environments usually include an instance of Dataverse, which is a native relational database that predates Power Platform itself. We use the Power Platform Admin Center to configure environments, most typically with DLP policies. DLP policies themselves determine which of the roughly 1,000 data connectors which are available can actually be used within an environment. Of those, we're really close to 1,000 right now. I'll probably breach it very soon. Vast majority of those are to third-party data stores like Oracle and Google Analytics and the Twitter, and maybe about 120 are to Microsoft in products and services. So from this diagram and slicing security from 2 angles, originally it was security features improvements in the platform, and the most visible place that you could see that results of that work would be in DLP policies themselves. But the second focus was empowering our own citizen developers to write secure low-code, no-code, and in particular, reduce risk from unintended consequences of citizen development. Before I move to the next slide, I do want to call out Power Pages white paper, and I gave the URL there, and it talks a lot about the original top 10 and how that's been applied to Power Pages websites. Next slide, please. So as part of my efforts, I started by trying to write a series of interconnected white papers that would pivot off our security development lifecycle, also known as the SDL. And I thought I'd have a checklist, and then each line item of the checklist would have guidance and be about 20, 30 pages, but that just didn't last very long. The guidance for any line item in the checklist is vastly different when you're configuring and securing Dataverse versus when you're configuring and securing flows for the same line item. The checklist grew to pages and pages and pages with lots of applicability check marks like you can see here, and quickly became very unwieldy. I literally have hundreds of pages of guidance that align to these line items, and that's great for someone like myself doing security assessments, but it's not very practical for citizen developers, and I needed a different paradigm. Next slide, please. So it was about a year ago when I met Michael Bargury, and he introduced me to the top 10, although at the time I think it was more like a top 6, and I had fun watching it grow last summer. I started to reframe my guidance around the top 10, and many of the challenges, not including page bloat, just started to wash away. And I could show this diagram to a citizen developer and walk them through it, and they'd start to get it, whereas a multi-page checklist was just overwhelming. Many of the issues I was struggling with just were gone. So I put this together first to for my own understanding, and then later wrote some text behind it just to verify that. And you'll notice there's some overlap between the categories. The size of the overlap, you shouldn't take too much meaning from that. I was going more for clarity than I was trying to reflect that there's 20% of account impersonation is in data leakage and unexpected consequences. But from this diagram, I can frame the top 10 and use that to help basically improve security awareness in our citizen developers. And it's far more practical than hundreds of pages of content. So how do we take this top 10 and apply it to the Power Platform architecture? Next slide, please. And Ziv, are there any questions so far?
Not so far.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So this is another diagram that I could spend a lot of time on. It's also a subset of a much larger diagram. But vertical columns represent configuration and horizontal layers represent dependencies. For apps and flows, configuration consists of defining ownership. That is, who can modify the app or flow, or even add additional owners for a given app or flow. Chatbots share the notion of ownership before I get chatbots. Then the other thing is who can execute the app or flow. And so that's determined who do we share it with. We could share it with everyone in the company, or we could share it against, say, a security group. But security groups themselves can be nested. They evolve over time. So when you create the app, the list of who you share it with could change dramatically over time without your awareness. Chatbots share the notion of ownership and sharing, but really the important thing here with chatbots is authentication, which could be anonymous authentication, could be OData, and chatbots are all internet facing, but you can configure them whether or not they are visible on the internet. Could be visible just within your own enterprise. Power Pages adds the notion of web roles as well as authentication. Environments and Dataverse both have the notion of security roles, although Dataverse has a lot more security roles than an environment without Dataverse. And Dataverse expands upon that configuration with table permissions. Horizontal rows represent dependencies for resources like apps and flows. In this case, connections are an instance of a connector that actually connects to a back-end data source. And again, that could be anything from Twitter to SQL Server or Microsoft, or Excel. For apps and flows, I've broken out different types of apps and flows. For example, model-driven apps, business process flows, as well as Power Portal's websites all have a dependency upon Dataverse. So from this, both dependencies and configuration, how does it map to the OWASP top 10? Next slide, please. So from this, you can see connections end up touching upon the majority of the OWASP top 10. And if you were to summarize these 6 categories, I would call it preventing unintended consequences which result in the credential and/or data oversharing. There's strong coupling between authorization misuse, category number 2, and data leakage, unexpected consequences, category number 3. And you can see that repeatedly throughout the diagram. And so one of the things that this group will have to look at is, do we merge these two together? Should they be one category? I think I can make an effective argument that despite the overlap, they deserve to be their own category. But if I know anything from like the original OWASP top 10 for web applications, is our categories are going to evolve considerably in the next 12 to 18 months. Category 9, asset management failures, and category 10, security and logging failures, don't really pop up in this particular analysis. They kind of feel more like platform features or perhaps even gaps in platforms or have questionable applicability. So in our secure development lifecycle, for example, there is a requirement that you do auditing and logging. But in our tenant, 14% of all the apps in our tenant are nothing more than using Power Apps to write a very thin form, a custom form around a SharePoint list. This is not an enterprise-grade application requiring detailed auditing and logging requirements. This is personal productivity. So I suspect 9 and 10, at least just my own instincts, are going to be 2 that we discuss in terms of giving them more of a citizen developer or giving them a low-code, no-code developer focus. So from this and from related artifacts, the SDL that I'm writing for Power Platform is starting to take shape. I'm generally having one requirement per category for the first 8 categories. And I'm wrestling a little bit on number 9 and 10 and how that would fit into a secure development lifecycle for citizen developers. Over time, as that content matures, I will submit parts of it to the low-code, no-code for consideration by the larger V team. Some of it may go into the definition of the top 10 itself, but like the original top 10, there may be additional artifacts. For example, cross-site scripting has a very large cheat sheet in addition to being part of the OWASP top 10 itself. So I imagine in time, we're going to have additional artifacts for the top 10 for low-code and no-code, and it's just a question of when. Next slide. So writing security guidance like I'm doing will help. Like the original OWASP top 10, developers who see it will be enthused and excited about it. They will change what they're doing in order to ensure compliance. But it's not going to be effective as continuous assurance. We need tooling that will validate the OWASP top 10 low-code, no-code for low-code platforms. And back in the days when I started my own security work and doing manual code inspections, we didn't have a lot of tools at that time. And the original OWASP top 10 was influential and instrumental in terms of tools becoming available across the industry that would help validate and provide that continuous assurance. We are on the cusp of that transition today for low-code, no-code. And it will have so while what we have today and the work that we're going to do this year to improve the top 10 will have immediate benefit, the real payoff in time will be the ability to have tooling that can find, remediate, and continuously monitor for security risks that align with the top 10. It's going to be a very exciting journey, and I'm happy to be able to share it with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. I do have a small question for you.
Yeah, go ahead and stop showing slides. We're in the appendix now.
Thank you for that. That was really insightful. I wanted to ask, from your experience working with enterprise customers, which category interests the enterprise customers more than others? Where do they find more risk? Or more
I would
concern?
split it between categories 2 and 3: authorization misuse, and then okay, now I'm going to have to go cheat and look at the slides for the original for the full name. Authorization misuse, and then data leakage and unexpected consequences are probably the two places where I see the most possibility of unintended consequences resulting in credential and or data oversharing, with account impersonation being a close second.
Thank you for that.
Don, I'm gonna read out a question. What is the key thing to be aware of when you think about OWASP with regards to the low-code, no-code?
I'm sorry, what is the key thing to be aware of?
Yes. So, I mean, we've covered a lot of grounds here. What would you say is the first thing to focus on?
Oh, other than those two categories I just mentioned, I think security misconfiguration. With Power Platform connectors, many of them give you multiple forms of authentication, and there can be side effects, unintended consequences, if you choose one form of authentication over another. So I can't speak to other platforms, at least not yet, but my recommendation would be for something that's performing that connection to read the documentation very closely to make sure that you understand how it's working and that you take advantage of any security controls that are in place and you don't stumble into a weaker security. There's also, I think, issues that are not as obvious to any developer, not just citizen developers, in terms of you're going to a back-end server that's hosting something like SQL Server or Oracle or whatever. Is that server misconfigured? So you think you're getting a secure communication channel with the back-end server, but in fact you're not. with how we do things with the SDL and the other processes we have within Microsoft, there's a lot of tooling in place, either related to the SDL or that happens independently to sort of spot that sort of thing. For a citizen developer, you start talking about that low level of infrastructure, their eyes are going to glaze over. I mean, a lot of developers, their eyes glaze over as well, so not just citizen devs. Does that answer your question?
I think this also ties into I think it does, and it also ties into to another question. I mean, actually, to multiple questions that I'm seeing here in chat, which are mainly about I mean, the fact that many of the people that are building those apps are business users. So how do you discuss it with them? Do you try to educate business users to the security implications of building with low-code, no-code? What is the right approach there?
Oh, it's a challenge. We have 800,000 flows and 280,000 apps. Number of flows that we have doubles every 2 years. So keeping up with that, let alone doing any kind of hygiene, is very difficult. And so we have some governance IT glue that we've built so that when someone creates a new app or a new flow, they get an email that says, "Welcome to the revolution. We're really glad you're using Power Platform. Here's some things you should know to enable your success." And then that content has been evolving over time. And it's not just security. It's how to use Flow, or do you go for questions? Here's the team that you should join and talk to our quote ninjas unquote. But it also has security content in there as well. I expect that as I get further with top 10 low-code, no-code for an SDL, based on that, that content will continue to evolve, and that will be reflected in that "Welcome to the Revolution" email.
Thank you. So one other question I'm seeing here is how do you get your security team to buy in to look at a security for low-code, no-code, or to back you up?
There has been challenges in the past with like folks in the SDL who are very focused on C# and Java and whatnot. When there is serious development being done, mostly for line of business and enterprise solutions, but it's also being used in actual products. And so getting them to the point where our SDL requirements need to be friendly to Power Platform. And even the Power Platform UI, there's significant differences there between, say, Visual Code and Visual Studio, that the content that applies in spirit to Power Platform as written doesn't apply directly just because of those significant differences. So I think the first version of the SDL for Power Platform I created was just about 2 years ago, and I'm working on the third version right now. And so we have various scoping questions when you go in, when you have to register your application or your platform or your solution. You get asked a bunch of profiling questions, and one of them is, are you using Power Platform? And then things happen from there in the process.
One other question we've gotten in chat is about Zapier and what kind of problems are we finding with Zapier. So I'll briefly mention that all of the problems that we've just saw we've seen them particularly with Zapier. I can share in particular with the misconfigurations or with the predictable misconfigurations. Zapier has a service called Store by Zapier, where you can use where you can store state for your automations, and there are particular cases where you can misconfigure the secret that protects your sensitive data there, which exposes you to basically external hackers looking in. And there's also the connection sharing issue, same one we've shared earlier. Okay, so we're at the top of the hour, and there's a lot of people on the call, so we want to make it, we want to be respectful of everyone's time. There are a bunch of questions we haven't answered, and so we are going to write all of those down, and then we're going to answer them in the Slack channel. We're also going to share the deck and the video in Slack, in the email group. If you can't make it to Slack for some reason, just reach out to me. I'll send my email in chat in a moment. And please feel free to reach out to me. Feel free or join us on Twitter, join us on Slack, join us on the email group. There are multiple ways to join in. We will share the deck the answers to the Q&A, the recording in all of those. And again, the number one thing we want to get out of this is collaboration. If you have ideas on how we can be better as a community, please reach out. Don, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge with us. This was really insightful. And we look forward to see everyone here in the next meetup.